Okay, welcome after an extended break to the series of videos around book restoration, and this particular one is a particularly fine German book. What we're looking at here is a 1534 copy of the works of Flavius Josephus. This was translated into German. My German is very, very bad, but basically what this says is the celebrated Flavius Josephus. It was first sort of translated by Dr. Caspar Hedio in the year 1531, and then in the year 1534 was subject to basically a comprehensive edition and sort of correction of errors and so on and so forth. So this is basically, if you like, a second edition of that work. It was printed in the city, if I just get to the colophon here, it was printed in the city of Strasbourg at the print house of Balthasar Beck. Balthasar Beck was the printer, and his wife Margaret was the owner of the business. Actually, it's a female-owned business, and they were Anabaptists, and they operated during the first sort of 3 decades of the 16th century. So this fits squarely in that timeline, and this was printed in 1535. So that's the date of this book, 1535. Which means it's not a post-incunable. To be one of those, you have to be 500 years old, but you're not far off at all. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this book is how it's bound. This is late medieval manuscript. It's the biggest sort of complete sheets that I've seen, likely German. There's some music on it. I've forwarded copies of photographs of this to some colleagues, up in Canada, some academic colleagues at Dalhousie and McGill universities, and their assessment is that this is probably, actually, maybe only 100 years older than the book itself. Which was surprising to me. They're almost contemporaneous, but you can see there's some sort of, you get a flavour for what may be available here as you look at this sort of unsullied sort of manuscript under the paste down there. So what else about this book? So the actual inner text block itself is in remarkably good condition. One thing that really leapt out was this. There's a complete gathering of blank paper. So to have blank paper that's basically almost post-incunable, that amount of it is kind of wild, to be honest. The sort of covers themselves, I mean, I wouldn't even call these boards. I mean, this is almost limp vellum. There is actually a very thin layer of very rough card inside here. But really it's the manuscript that's the structure of the book at this point, of these boards anyway. If I look at the spine, you've got 3 double ribs here. This sort of double rib pattern was, very common basically during the 16th century, kind of died out after that. But only 3 of them. And the top 2 have both failed. The boards are very loosely held here by the bottom third, but really the only thing that's holding these manuscripts on are these 3 further strips of manuscripts that have been sort of glued down, and you can see this one has kind of separated here. So the book, I mean, this has very, very little kind of life left in it. You could argue it's made it this far, which would be fair. But, it's only one slight accident away from really coming apart. So I do propose to separate these manuscripts. Now, the academics were very clear with me that I should not under any circumstances attempt to clean this, so I'm not going to clean the exposed surfaces. However, what I am hoping is that underneath, if we actually remove this thin layer of card here, we may actually find that there was also manuscript on the other side that looks more like this. And that may actually tell us a great deal more about the sort of history of the manuscripts and so on and so forth. It could be really interesting. So I do propose to remove this, but not to attempt any kind of cleaning here. So so we'll do that. So we'll get back to the, I guess, the original text block, and we'll have the separate sort of manuscripts as artifacts in their own right. Then what I'm going to do is use a piece of canvas board, basically to make new boards. And I'm going to use this really beautiful goat skin leather to do the restoration with. Just to give you an idea, this was made for the same cut of leather. This is my King James Bible, 1620. And it turned out really well. So I think we're going to end up with something that kind of looks similar to this, but it's just obviously rather bigger and slightly thinner. So this book will be sort of set fair for hopefully its next 500 years. So we'll do that, but the really interesting thing right now is going to be seeing if there's some magic we can unveil by sort of removing this card and seeing whether we've got some, a set of, an amount of cleaner manuscript that we can have a look at. So there we go. Okay, so here's the text block, which actually is in very, very good shape. This is, I'm always just super impressed by how the quality of paper when you go back 500 years is just kind of awesome, really. So this is actually in really good shape. So I think this is going to be a relatively simple job of sistering the bands with some really thick cord, attaching the boards, and just sort of setting this book up to look really awesome in this lovely goat skin leather here. But how do we make out with the covers here? Well, the first thing to say is the actual fragments that were over the spine didn't fare well at all. These were obviously very, very heavily glued back in the time, and that glue sort of did its work. But the boards themselves are a different matter. So this is the obviously this was the backboard, and as you can see, it was really quite dirty. But most of the actual card came off really easily, and I haven't even really gotten into removing the rest of it, but you can probably see here, this is just absolutely gorgeous. Sort of high Latin, sort of Gothic, sort of high Gothic sort of, or pre-Gothic font. You've got this sort of beautiful music there just peeking through. So in terms of actually removing the rest of this, this is, obviously I don't want to do any damage at all to this. So frankly, this is going to be fingernails. I'm not going to be using anything sharper than a fingernail on this. So I'm literally going to be clawing away at this to just gently remove it bit by bit until we get back to really seeing the underlying music here, which would be really quite special. So I'm going to guess this is, I don't know, the experts in Canada will be able to really advise me. I'm thinking this is 600 to 700 years old, maybe. Something like that. But that music, that's not like any music you'll see today, for sure.